Hi, my name is Keith Wyatt, and I'd like to welcome you to the Ultimate Beginner Series for Blues Guitar, Step 2. Now, if you saw Step 1, we covered all the fundamentals of blues. We talked about the 12-bar blues progression, about the medium shuffle, and about several different ways to play rhythm on that pattern. We talked about the basics of phrasing, starting with the scale and then adding some string bending, sliding, hammer-ons, things like that. In Step 2, we're going to take all of that stuff one step further. We're going to slow the tempo down a bit so we can really concentrate on how the notes sound, each note individually. And we're going to talk about some extremely important techniques like vibrato, and we'll get further into string bending at the same time. We'll also talk about a couple of different scale patterns that will help add to the sounds that you can play. Now, the only thing you need is your guitar and to be in tune with mine. So let's take a second here and tune up before we get started. All right, I'm going to play each string one at a time, and you tune up to me. Here we go, starting with the high E string. Here we go. Now B. The G. D, A, and low E. And when you get done, play a chord. See if it sounds all right. If you're not in tune yet, go ahead and stop the tape, get tuned up, and then you'll be ready to go. All right? I'll see you in a second. In Step 1, we talked about the medium shuffle, and I talked about the 12-bar chord progression. There's a couple things I want to add to that. We're still going to talk about a shuffle, but we're going to slow the rhythm down a little bit. And when you slow it down, you can start to feel each part of the triplet. At a medium tempo, of course, you got the dot, 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 dot feeling going, right, with the first and last part of the triplet. At a slower tempo, start to feel more like the full triplet. Dot, 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 dot. It's still a shuffle, but it's a slow shuffle, and this is the essence of slow blues. Also, we're going to change key. Everything we did in Step 1 was based around the key of A. Let's go to the key of G, just for a change. And we might even change it up again later on. You don't want to be stuck to some fret, do you, huh? So, key of G. Now, what do? Well, here's A on the 6th string. Move it down. There's G. Want to play a blues in G? You got it. Now, with the 12-bar progression, we played a very standard, basic version. 4 bars on the 1 chord, 2 bars on the 4 chord, and so on. There's a variation I'm going to show you right now, which happens probably 50% of the time, and that's this right here. I'm going to show you what it is. You'll hear it, and then I'll explain it for you. It goes like this. There's G. Now what happened? I counted the thing off, and instead of staying 4 bars on the 1 chord, I went directly to the 4 chord in the 2nd bar. That's called a quick change. That's what everybody calls it, so you want to know that name. Quick change means 4 chord in the 2nd bar. Then you go right back to the 1 chord for 2 more bars, so it's still a total of 4. 1 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord, 1 chord. Then you change to the 4 chord as you did previously, 2 bars on the 4 chord, then back to 1 for 2 bars. Then you go 5, 4, 1, turnaround. That's the only thing that really changed, all right? Now, in addition to that, I'm going to show you a new rhythm pattern. This has been around for quite a while. It's actually invented probably by T-Bone Walker over 60 years ago. It goes like this. Now right now it feels kind of weird because you don't know where the beat is, but I'm going to show you the shape and then show you how to plug it in. This is based around this chord right here. First of all, let's form a G major triad. That's a familiar shape. And we're going to take the top 4 strings, so you refinger it, 3rd finger, 2nd finger, 1st finger, bar. And then we're going to add a note to it. Your 4th finger isn't doing anything right now. So take that 4th finger, stick it on the 2nd string at the 5th fret. Now you've got the same shape with that note added. That's called a 6th chord, a 6th chord. Now you take that chord and you move it down 2 frets. Now you're thinking, that must be F6, right? Wrong. This is the trick. This is a guitar trick right here. Magic of the way the guitar is laid out. It's the same shape, moved down 2 frets, but it's still a G chord. So that's actually called a G9 or a G dominant 9 chord. G6, G9. This is a very important chord, and we're going to come back to this one again too. But the pattern involves sliding from there to there. Now, how do you add that to the 12-bar progression? Well, what you do is you play that little slide starting on the 2nd beat of the measure. So it goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4. Now, you got it? Play with me. Let's try C. Now you can move up. There's C. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and back to G. 4, 1, 2, and now up to D. Here's the D root. D6, the root's on top. Sliding down to D9. So 3, 4, 1, 2, and back to C again. And back to G. Remember the turnaround? That's from step 1. We go from the chord half step above the 5 chord down to the 5 chord, playing a 9th chord. You recall that shape. All right? So there's your slow blues rhythm part. Now the way I showed you is to take the same shape and move it around. I'll show you one more little trick here. It makes it a little easier even. There's your slide, 4 chord. There's your C chord up here. The exact same notes, but played with 1 finger. So check it out. 3, 4, G, 2, and 3. Here comes C. Just use your index finger. Back to G again. Now you can stay in position. Very easy. Now we go back to C. I'm putting in the bass note there just so you know where you are. I hope you're playing with me now. Come on. Here's D. Now we start here. Right? Same shape as the C. And back to G again. And the turnaround. Got it? Work on that one for a second. Now I'm going to show you another way to play rhythm using the same kind of chord that I just showed you. That's the 6th chord. Now we've learned it as a sliding chord, but here's how you can use it just using this shape all by itself and using the top note as well. Gives you a little bit of extra fullness. Now this style of playing is something that I call horn section rhythm. The reason being the types of phrases that we're going to play kind of remind me of what you see. If you see a blues band and they got the 4 saxophones up there wearing the matching salmon velour suits, right? And they're all doing their steps. Bop, 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 da, bop, right? You can kind of get that in your mind because that's what we're going after right here. So this is the kind of chord you're going to hear. 3, 4. Right? That's the idea. That's exactly the sound we're going for. So you take that shape and you can slide it by half step and right back into position again. Then when you go to the 4 chord, staying in the same position, you can use C9 and then the D9. It's very easy. We'll go back to our slower tempo and I'll play it through as a demo one time. Why don't you back me up? I'll tell you what, this would be a good combination right here. Play that. real slow and easy groove. Don't forget your quick change, right? Play that behind me and I'll show you how this horn section thing works. Here we go. 1, 2, top, and... Back to 4 now. Now the 5. See, it's really easy, and it's a nice, effective way of building the groove up a little bit. If you combine that with this one, you've got 2 different ways to play rhythm on a slow blues, in addition to all the other styles that I showed you in the previous video. Now you've got a lot of possibilities. That's what you need as a rhythm player, both to make the sound interesting for the listener and to keep yourself interested as well. If you're playing the same part all the time, it gets a little bit boring. Now that we have a couple of different rhythm patterns, let's put it all back together in a 12-bar progression again. And I'm going to show you 2 more variations. First, I'm going to show you a new introduction, and then I'm going to show you a new chord to use at the end. All right, starting with the introduction. There are 2 ways that bands generally start blues songs most of the time. And one of them is just to start from the 1, as they say. In other words, count the song off and start right on the 1 chord and go through the progression, either with the quick change or without. That's the kind of thing you talk over beforehand. The second way that's extremely popular is what they call take it from the 5. And what this means simply is you start with the 5 chord and play the last 4 bars of the 12-bar progression, which we've been doing as we've been working on some of these little patterns here. So we get 5, 4, and then you'll play the usual turnaround. Then you start the next chorus from the top, right? And keep going from there. It's a nice introduction. It gives you a little variety in your arrangements, and it kind of sets the song up. So it's a good one to know. That's called From the 5. So we're going to play an arrangement in just a moment here that uses that particular introduction. The second thing is the last chord. Now, as I mentioned in step 1, when you get to the end of a blues, it's very important that you end on the 1 chord. The timing is all the same as it is for the rest of the choruses. You go 5, 4, now we're coming up to the end. This is the last chorus, the song's over. You don't go to 5, you go back to 1. That's extremely important. If you go to 5, it sounds like you're going to keep going. This sounds like you're ending. Now the chord I'm using here is the new thing. This is also a 9th chord. And all I've done is take the sliding chord that we learned earlier and add 1 more note to it. And the note is this right here. And this is called G dominant 9th. Now the funny thing about this chord is that you look throughout the notes here, there's no G in that chord. The bass note, the root, is over here. And you're not playing it. The bass player is playing it, right? So when you hear the bass player play the G and play this chord against it, you get this overall effect. I'm using my thumb here. So there's your G dominant 9th chord. If you want to use the same chord for C, you can go up the neck and find it in the 8th position. There's your root. You're not playing it, but there it is. You can see it. There's D. All right? So now we have 2 ways to play a 9th chord. G9 and C9, 2 different voicings. We have G6. We have another G9 with that high note on top. And we have all the other little variations that we worked on in the first video. Lots of possibilities. All right, now let's take some of the things we've been working on and put them together in probably the world's shortest blues song. We're going to play a complete arrangement, but it's going to begin and end in 1 chorus. All right, I'm going to explain it to you exactly the way that we talk it over as a band. Now, this is a 12-bar slow blues in the key of G, quick change. The intro is from the 5, and when we get to the end, I'm going to throw one more thing on you right here as a rhythm player. What we're going to do is come up to the end, and you're playing your whatever part you're playing. Here's the 5 chord, the 4 chord. When you get to 1, you're going to stop along with the band, 4, 1, then end. And use that 9th chord that I showed you at the end there. That's the hip chord right there. All right, now during that break, I'm going to play a little lick. As a matter of fact, I'm going to jam over the whole thing. You're going to back me up. It better be good too, huh? So you can use anything you want. You're going to hear some rhythm guitar on the track, and you can play around that. You can play with that, right? It's just using all the same ideas we've covered and putting them together in different ways so you get a taste of it. All right, you ready? Let's do it. Now that we've spent some time with rhythm and with groove at that slower tempo, let's turn our attention again to melody, to soloing. And slower tempo is a good place to really get into phrasing because you've got more time to think about the notes. It really brings out the quality of each note, and that's what phrasing is all about, is make each note sound finished before you go on to the next note. Very important point. Now, as part of our phrasing discussion here, we're going to open up the neck a little bit, and let me review for just a second what was covered in step 1. We talked about the blues scale, and since we've been in the key of G so far, we'll stay here for the moment. Blues scale in the key of G would be based around the 3rd fret. And remember, we added some low notes and some high notes. So now in the key of G, we can cover the 3rd fret region down to the 1st fret and up to about the 8th fret. Now, one alternative, if you want to go higher, is like many great blues players do, you just skip immediately up to the octave, which is all the way up here at the 15th fret. And you can obviously find all the same notes up there that you found down at the 3rd fret. There's another pattern that players use to help fill in the gap between what you've got in this area of the neck and what's all the way up high. And that's the one I'm about to show you. This is based around the 10th position. We're in the key of G, remember. And if our first pattern was built essentially around this big G major bar chord, then the next pattern I'm going to show you is built around this G major bar chord. And this is one that everybody knows. It's convenient to think of chords and scales as being related. If you let them get too far apart from one another, it makes your soloing and your rhythm playing kind of separate, and that's not a good idea, especially in blues. So we think of all of our scales as being related to chords. So there's a G chord up in there, and we want to find a G blues scale. Now, there's a G right on the 3rd string, and if I just kind of go by ear, find the same notes that I had down here. There it is, and as a matter of fact, it's precisely the same shape moved up an octave. And now the low G is on the 5th string. And now I can add a little bit down below. Now, here's the trick. When you get to the 2nd string, because of the way that the guitar is tuned, you're going to have to shift up to the next fret. So you use your 2nd finger there. Now, I'm using my 3rd finger. Why? So that I can reach the flat 5 with my 4th finger. back over to the 5th, and then finally reach up to the 7th. Back down again. Shift. Now that's a scale pattern, and as you've already discovered, solos use ideas built from scale patterns, but the scale itself is not the thing. The scale is just all the notes you can play lined up end to end. It doesn't make a melody. So we're going to want to fish around within that pattern to see if we can find some phrases. Here's the way to do it. Take the phrases you already know from your more familiar position down here and find them in the new spot. All right, there's a familiar phrase in G. I go up here. Now, first thing I have to do is figure out, well, that one starts on the root, right? And it goes up to the next note in the scale, and then I bend it, right? Go up here, find the root. Go up to the next note in the scale. All right? So I'm kind of opening up the new pattern by ear. The shape is different. It's going to make your hands do different things, different combinations of fingers. At first it might seem kind of confusing, but if you relate it back to your original chord shape and use the sound that you're already familiar with, you're going to start to hear and see new phrases in this new position. And what it does is give you a lot more flexibility. You can now link together this spot on the neck to this spot, to this spot, to this spot, and you have very few open spots left. So now you're kind of getting command of the entire neck. All right? So in a little while, we're going to play along with the band again, and I'll give you a chance to use that pattern. But before we do that, I'm going to show you another idea. We're going to get a few things going here, and then you can kind of go back and forth and try them out. So far, we've concentrated our melody around the blues scale. That's kind of the basic sound in blues, of course. But you hear a lot of notes like the stuff I was just playing while you were backing me up. It sounds a lot sweeter, and it is, because I'm using different notes. I'm not staying strictly within the blues scale. I'm trying to get a sweeter sound by emphasizing notes that are not in the scale, but they're in the chord. Now check it out, all right? If we take a chord that we already learned here, the G6th chord. Now look at that chord and compare it to the blues scale in the same position. Now what notes are in the chord that are not in the scale? There's that note right there. There's that note right there. What's that? Major third, major sixth. So we've added two new sounds by playing the notes that are in the chord. If I want to sound like my melody matches the chord, right there I got a classic lick. It's using notes of the chord. Then I can also use the scale. So by emphasizing the notes that belong to the chord, I get a new sound added to my old sound. It's not a new scale. It's just an additional sound within the same bluesy thing that we're already working with, right? So don't freak and think you got to learn a bunch of new patterns. It's not the case. Just adding new sounds to old sounds, right? Now, here's a trick. I'm going to show you the B.B. King secret scale pattern, known only to a few. And here's how you do it right here. We're in the key of G, right? I'm going to find a new spot on the neck, one we haven't used before. Here's G on the first string. We're used to this one. Now, what about if you find G on the second string? Where is it? It's up here at the 8th fret. Now, got a little shape I'm going to use, and it's a shape you already know. If we're in G, our blues scale, and we tack on the extra high notes, remember that? Take that same exact shape, 5 notes, move it up 2 frets. Bingo. Now you got all the sweet notes. Your fingers do basically the same things, but now you're emphasizing naturally the notes that make the melody sound much sweeter. Right? So here's your G chord. Right? Doesn't Doesn't that sound pretty, right? Now you can kind of mix it up a little bit. You can start in this position. Now, by ear, I have to choose the notes, right? You can't get away from that. Your fingers are not going to do it. The fingers don't know, right? They're just going to run around, and every note's the same as far as your fingers are concerned. Your ear is what's making the choice. So as I bend a note, I have to listen. Is that the note I want? Yeah, that's it, right? If I bend it a little different, I get a whole different effect. Now this is, as I say, this is the secret B.B. King position, because when you listen to B.B., he's a very sweet player, and he uses that effect a lot. So that's a real good spot to work in. So now we have two new patterns added to what you've already got. The blues scale, based off the 5th string, 3rd string chord there, and the sweet spot, is what I call it, based off the 2nd string, right? So if you get used to those two patterns, now you've really opened up a whole new area of the neck that we haven't used before, and you get a whole different thing going in your melody. Now, before we put our new scales, new sounds to work, let's talk for just a moment about some other phrasing ideas. Remember, phrasing is the idea of taking the notes you play and making them sound as much like a singer as possible. Every time I play, here's a technique that I use without even thinking about it anymore, and that's called vibrato. Now, that's a vocal technique. That's one I've heard every singer use that I ever heard. And it's one of the techniques that might take you a while to really master, but it's worth it because it'll make your playing sound polished. It'll give you that final touch that makes the notes sound finished. I'll just give you a brief rundown of how it's done, and the rest of it's going to be up to you. It's a string bend. We already know how to bend strings, right? We talked about bending up a whole step. Way back in the basic guitar, step 2, I talked about using a couple of fingers and getting more strength behind the note, using your ear, trying to hear the pitch you're reaching for. Now, vibrato is just like that. I'll show you 2 ways to do it. One is if you're playing a note that's not bent, okay? Here I'm playing, well, I'll pick a note that, on the 2nd string, that's a good one. That's a G. That's at the 8th fret. All right, I'm using my 3rd finger to play the note, 2nd and 1st finger behind it. And what I'm actually doing, I'll slow it way down for you. I'm bending it up and down. Now it's just like a regular string bend. I'm using all 3 fingers, and I'm using my wrist to kind of push it up. As it gets faster and faster, at a certain point, it stops sounding like a bend and starts to sound more like a natural kind of vibration. That's vibrato. Okay? Now the trick is it's all in the wrist. The wrist is moving up with the bend and down again. Up and down. The hardest thing is to get control of that motion so it's even. It's the same width and the same speed all the time. Start out slow. You can even use a metronome. Gradually speed up. You'll find a spot there where it just feels like that's the right spot. Every player you see up here on the wall, they all have a different vibrato. In fact, you could probably tell them apart just by their vibrato alone. It's that much of a signature sound. It really makes you different from other players. So it's going to be your own way. It might take a while, but as I say, it's really worth it. Now, if you bend a string, here's the trick. You bend the note to pitch, and then you let it down a little bit, and then back up. So you're bending, releasing, and it gradually gets faster. The hardest thing about that is you're going to tend to get worn out. Your wrist will get tired, your fingers will get tired. If you haven't developed your calluses fully yet, your fingers are going to hurt. But if you can do it unbent, then the bent version is much easier. As I say, I use it everywhere. It's a natural part of blues phrasing. Can't really live without it. Another thing is dynamics. That's loud and soft, and that's a natural thing also that you hear singers do. Most of the time I use the pick, or I'll use my fingers. I don't let go of the pick, though. If I want to use my fingers, I'll just use them with the pick still attached to my normal position. The fingers give you a little softer sound when you pluck a note with it. You can kind of stroke the string as opposed to striking it with the pick. So that's something you can experiment with. Play soft as you can possibly play. And then without touching the volume knob, hit it as hard as you can. That's the range you can get, and it's nothing to do with the electronics. It's all in your fingers. That's where your tone comes from. All right, now we're going to play with the band, do a little call and response like we did on the first video. We're in the key of G. It's only a G chord, one chord. And I'm going to take you through some of the stuff I've been showing you. It's a lot to cover right now. We're going to start out with some familiar stuff, our familiar position, blues scale. Maybe I'll add a sweet note or two into that position, move up the neck a bit, and then I'll go into the BB, patented position up there in the 8th fret, and then we'll wind up in the 10th position playing out of the new blues scale pattern. All right? Once again, listen to me. I'm going to play a phrase. I'm going to leave a hole for you to play it back at me. See how close you can get. All right? Let's do it. Take it. Da, 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 da. Just stay with me. Oh, yeah. Let's not forget the low part. Yeah, sounds kind of like you're talking down in there. Here's a classic right here. We're going up. Yeah. Let's stay in that spot for a second. Position, some sweet notes. Get that? A little bit more. Now let's try that in BB land here. That feels pretty good. Here's a classic BB lick. Stay right in the pocket. Let's go up to 10th position. Try that. Here we go. Phrases you play down low, just move them up. Oh yeah. I hope you're starting to get the feel a little bit. Basically, it's the same whether you're playing on one chord or playing on a 12-bar progression as we're about to do. The only difference is that when you change to a different chord, some of the notes that sound sweet on the 1 chord might not sound so good against the 4 chord. And that's because what we're starting to do now is get inside the harmony. We're bringing the harmony and the melody, the scales and the chords, closer together. And so you start to hear how they really match up. You can't really tear them apart. When we play a sweet note on the 1 chord, see, that's really based on that 6th chord right there. When we go to the C chord, for instance, if I play that same lick, that note right there is suddenly going to sound, sounds a little weird. It doesn't quite work. And you might have run into that already in your blues playing, where just a note sounds great over this chord, sounds terrible over that chord. How come? Well, look at the chord and look at the note, and you'll find that usually the note that sounds bad is a half step, 1 fret away from a chord tone, and it gets that dissonant thing happening, which you don't always want. So here's a little trick for you right here, just to get started now. Remember, we're just getting the ball rolling here. If you want to play over chords and you want to match the sound of the notes to the sound of the chords, use phrases that are built right off the shape of the chord. Right? Here's what I mean by that. Your 1 chord, we already know how to play over this one. Right? Now the notes that I'm playing there come right from the triad and the 7th. And so I'm playing really, essentially, almost what amounts to an arpeggio. The notes of the chord played 1 at a time in different orders. When I go to the 4 chord, C, I've got my C9 chord, or you remember way back from basic step 2, your C7 chord. Now look at the notes in C7. Now that can be a lick, right? Here's your 1 chord lick. Your 4 chord. Right? You check that out? All I'm doing is playing the notes of the chord with a little rhythm attached. The rhythm is so important. You can't separate the rhythm from the melody or the harmony, right? You see, everything kind of fits together. And that's what makes the phrases sound good. So I've got my 1 chord lick going up the 1 chord, my 4 chord lick coming down the 4 chord, right? I can go back up the 1. Here comes the 4 chord again. Same notes, back to 1. Now what about 5? Now what was that? Well, here's a D chord, and I'm playing the notes of the 5 chord. They sound a little funny when you isolate them like that. Now I'm changing my fingering so that I can use a finger that really gives me the most control. Index finger, second finger. That's where I'm trying to control the note, vibrato, etc. And then back to my 4 chord. So there's a complete solo, and it's built mainly from not scales, but from chords. Chords and scales really go together. Now, for instance, the BB did a song that sounded a lot like this. The basic melody of the song was built from the 1 chord, and then, in this case, changing position. So whatever you play here, you can go up, play off the C chord in 8th position, and you'll find the same notes built off the C chord. There's a lot of ways that you can start to mix things up. We've kind of covered the basics, covered a lot of ground, but there are many variations that you work out over time. And as you hear different players play and kind of get an idea of how they think, you're going to hear that there are any number of different combinations. All right? Now what we're about to do is play over a 12-bar chord progression. In step 1, we concentrated on the key of A. So far, we've been playing in the key of G. And just to keep you loose, we're going to go to the key of C. Now, the key of C, all the same rules apply. You just have to find your patterns. You've got the same major and minor sounds located in the same relative position. So find your C's, There's your home position right there. You go up. You'll find your sweet spot with the C on the second string. Depending on your guitar, you might be able to play up here in the 15th position. But if not, or even just for a variation, go down to the 3rd position, an octave low. And you'll be able to cover some ground down there as well. All right? So we're going to play over a 12-bar progression. I'm going to give it a shot. You're going to back me up, and then you're going to have your turn. All right? Let's do it. So I hope you had a good time with this video, and I hope you have a great time playing, and I hope to have a chance to see you again soon. All right? See you later.